know what that says. Question.
All right, folks, let's get started. So my name's Aaron Mesh. I'm the managing editor at Willamette Week. This is Anthony Effinger, a reporter covering Multnomah County business and a variety of other beats. And today we are here for the Oregon 3rd Congressional District interview, Democratic primary, which essentially is the general election in every meaningful way, given that there's like a roughly 94 to 6 split in the voting demographics. This is a race to succeed Representative Earl Blumenauer. I would like to ask each of you, before we get started, I should tell you that the purpose of the interview is to figure out who our editorial board is going to endorse. And that means that most of our questions are going to be focused on trying to find places in which you differ or have different experiences or present an option to the voters that your opponents may not. For that reason, we may choose to drill down on questions and ask one question or several questions to one of you in an effort to better understand your positions. That may mean that we don't give equal time. We would ask that each of you not interrupt one another, but at the same time, you are certainly welcome to speak to one another if you have questions or disagree with each other. And without further ado, and having done that spiel in record time, I would ask, Commissioner, could you please introduce yourself and give us roughly 2 minutes of why you are running for this office?
Sure. Sushila Jayathal. A little bit about my background and how I got here. I am an immigrant. I came to the U.S. when I was 16 to go to college. My parents really believed that sending me and then my sister here to the United States was the way to assure that we could be financially independent, that we could have professions. I have been a lawyer, so I graduated from Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania. I then went to the University of Chicago Law School, practiced law for a period of time, first as a litigator in San Francisco and then here in Portland. And then my last law job was as general counsel running the legal department for Adidas America. Throughout that time, what I knew was that I carried with me the sacrifice that my parents had made. And so while the law was good to me, it did what they had sent me here to do, which was to make myself financially independent. I felt a pull towards community service. And so, well, I should say, while I was at Adidas, I was responsible for the legal department. I also was responsible for creating the first set of labor standards that the brand had. And so I traveled a lot to Germany and to Southeast Asia to create those standards and to begin the process of implementing them. But pulled to community service. And so in 2000, I left Adidas and spent the next 16 years as a community advocate, community volunteer, serving on the boards of a number of different organizations. And then, as you know, in 2017, I ran for the county. Never thought politics was going to be my path, but I did it because of my concern about people in Multnomah County simply not being able to survive. I'll skip over my time at the county because I'm assuming that we'll get there and say, here's why I'm running for Congress, because this has been a peeling of the onion process for me. What I've recognized is that the big issues that I want to work on, and whether that's national issues like protecting our democracy, civil rights, attacking climate change, or very specific local issues like homelessness and addiction, and the fact that we've got middle-class families who worry about buying homes or putting food on their table or the cost of healthcare or childcare. All of those issues, the big solutions have to be created and resourced and implemented at the federal level. So that's why I'm running for Congress.
Is it Counselor?
Yes. Yeah.
Counselor, please go ahead.
Thank you. My husband told me yesterday, he goes, people just keep calling you a counselor, but you're also a business owner and you're also a director of a nonprofit. Like, get all that in there. You're a busy person. But yes, I'm in my 6th year on the Gresham City Council. And I think, why I'm running for this position, as I think the only person who doesn't live in Portland in this race, is that my mother came to this country in the trunk of a car, and my 8 siblings came to this country in the backseat of strangers' cars, and she did that because she wanted a better life for us. I think my mother had heard and believed that there was an American dream where people could come to the United States, go to college and get better paying jobs, and she wanted that for us. I was born in Los Angeles, and when I was 6 years old, my mother, to flee domestic violence, put us in a car, and my brother drove us to Oregon, and that was 38 years ago. And when we moved here, we lived in Woodburn, and my mother brought us up taking care of farm workers' kids and making lunches for farm workers. And my mother quickly learned that she could exchange childcare for us having a place to live. And so she would do that, and we ended up in Portland. And I went to elementary school here at Martin Luther King Elementary, Harriet Tubman Middle School, and then graduated from Marshall High School. And growing up here, it was tough, but it was also good. You know, I was the first in my family to graduate high school. I was the first to go to college. But I lost a brother when I was in my 8th grade to gun violence here at Peninsula Park. My brother was shot in the head by someone who should not have owned a gun. And then another brother of mine was shot when he was getting off of work. He was a carpenter, and someone wanted his drill and his saw and shot him about 12 times. I also lost a sister here 4 years ago to opioid addiction. My sister worked at cast iron parts, building parts for Boeing. She blew out her shoulder. The doctor prescribed her opioids. Got my sister hooked. My sister at the same time was also going through domestic violence and a divorce, and so it was just a deadly combination for her. My mother went back to Mexico when I was in college, to be with my dying grandmother. She overstayed her time allowed and got a 10-year ban, and she died 3 months before she was supposed to come back. Now, these are issues that affect people in this district. These are issues that affect people in this country. And 25 years ago, when I was at the University of Oregon as a freshman, a group of farm worker women asked us to help lead a boycott because they weren't getting paid fair wages and they had bad working conditions. They didn't have bathroom, they didn't have a cooling station, and or water. And I organized 25 years ago, and we won that. And I remember thinking, if undocumented farm worker women in this country can demand better working conditions and better pay, then any worker in this country can do that. And I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to doing that work. So for 25 years, I've organized on LGBTQ rights, for the Affordable Care Act, reducing gun violence, affordable housing, and so it's been my work for 25 years. And I've organized all across the country. And I joined the city council 6 years ago after Donald Trump got elected. And people in my community, including my librarian, was living in her car. And several immigrants in my community were picked up by ICE in front of a bank while they were cashing their paychecks. And that led me to run for city council. And I've been doing policy on the city council to address the same issues that I grew up experiencing, because I don't think anyone should have to do that. So I've built affordable housing that's multi-generational. I've created programs that have reduced gun violence and crime in Gresham. And I think that that is something that the whole district would benefit from, and this country. So.
Representative.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. And Eddie, every time you tell your story, it still continues to just break my heart. So, Maxine Dexter, physician, mom, legislator, and former business leader in healthcare. It's just a privilege to serve the people of Portland, and has really given me an opportunity to reflect on the things that I see in the clinic and do more to address them at the legislative level. So, you know, what I see in the clinic is people struggling to make ends meet, working too many jobs and not being able to afford their health care. Whether, you know, the impacts of our bad policy are seen in the exam rooms and in the ICU, quite frankly. Whether it's a houseless man who continues to come in with leg infections that can't heal because he has to go back out to the street, a pregnant woman who's bleeding to death because of complications from her pregnancy, or quite often people who can't afford their medications, diabetics and ketoacidosis, which is a life-threatening condition that's totally preventable. So I knew that we had to do more to address these issues. The things that I can offer aren't the things that they need. And so I knew I could do more if I ran for office in 2019. And then of course COVID happened as I was running, and that was, we diagnosed the first patient, and as we have discussed in the past, you know, with COVID in the state, and that of course turned everything on its head. So it's been a very challenging time to lead, and it also has been the most amazing privilege. I am somebody who didn't grow up with privilege. I'm the first in my family to go to college. I only am here because of an affordable higher education and a good union job, and we don't see that opportunity for people. So I want to make sure that we do everything we can, and I've established that I listen, I work well with others, I collaboratively have passed really significant legislation, including the $376 million housing package in the last session. We passed it bipartisanly with my Narcan package, the opioid harm reduction package 2395 in the 2023 session. We had Republicans voting to allow Narcan to be given to students without parental permission. That was a big deal for them with parental rights, but they understood the reason, and it actually helped bring them back and end the lockout. So I know that I can do this job. I want to serve Oregonians to the best impact I can, and I look forward to going to Congress to do that.
Thank you. Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Lydia Rand. I'm a multi-instrumentalist jazz musician and software engineer. I was in the Navy for seven years playing jazz trombone in the 90s. This is my third time running for this office. My platform leans heavily on addressing climate change and associated issues. I've been riding my bicycle since for transportation since 1990, and it's always been riding my bicycle in a sea of cars. It's actually pretty rare to have someone on the road, unless you're doing the bridge pedal. You know, it seems like everyone has a bicycle in their garage. We've got a pretty strong biking culture here, but you know, it made me think about kind of how absurd it is that we have these health problems and obesity problems, and we're producing these huge cars, and there's financial problems that, you know, we're trying to encourage people to you know, have a stronger middle class life, and you know, get that house with 2 cars and you know, all of that. And you know, it just seems like we're in this hyper consumptive world, and you know, unfortunately, I was homeless for 4 years. I lived on the streets for a year, teaching myself software engineering and the math of collision detection. I got very, very into math and logic, and you know, it's just simple math that it seems like we're deluding ourselves that you know, oil will run out, and it's a substance we pave our roads with and shingle our houses with, among all kinds of other things we do with it. You know, we really can't have this civilization without oil, and it will end. So who knows how long that is? I don't have a magic ball. You know, I'm just one person here saying, you know, we should reduce our population and not use so many vehicles here. You know, so anyway, that's a platform I'm working on.
Excellent. Michael.
Hi everybody. First of all, thank you for having me, and nice to meet you, and good to see you. I know we saw each other yesterday, so I'll start out with my youth. You know, I was 12 and we lost our house, and this was to a foreclosure before the foreclosure crisis. And my family lived on the corner, and my parents, neither of which had a 4-year degree, worked very hard to be able to afford and buy a home, which they ended up losing, causing you know, strife for our family. And so neither of my 2 parents, my dad actually passed away a couple years ago, neither of my parents completed a 4-year degree. My brother and I actually went on to both becoming lawyers, which is cool, and the joke is because we come from a Jewish family, it's from all the arguing or the shame or the guilt trips. And so nothing has been handed to me my whole life. You know, I have worked in restaurants for about 10 years. I have started businesses. I've done promotional work. I have once helped a woman who was pregnant with her cleaning company so that she could continue her business. So I have literally done every type of job imaginable. I graduated law school in the Great Recession in 2009, lost my apartment and my car, kind of had some deja vu moments, and have decided, I'm going to continue to dedicate my life to public service. So probably the most notable thing related to this is about 7 years ago, I decided to start my own law firm. I really believe in public interest, and when I was in law school, I was the president of public interest law. I also worked with women's law, environmental law, basically putting on policy forums that met kind of career folks, policy folks, law students, and the community, and figured out how we could all work together and collaborate on working on issues. And so when I started my law firm, I didn't see a lot of opportunities for nonprofits and for everyday small business owners. And this whole entire district, District 3, is a big small business community economy, and we're very big on shared prosperity. We have, as you know, arts, culture, restaurant, music, things like that. And so my law firm, Rational Unicorn Legal Services, for the past 7 years, we've done community business law for everyone in the community, and we have a pay-as-you-go model that is all-inclusive. We do a lot of pro bono and low bono work. We also partner with community organizations, women incubators, and folks like NAMAC, people who are, we also partner with the Native Chamber and folks like that who they have been shut out of the professional service world, and so I re-envisioned that. I was awarded Portland Business Journal, love them or hate them, I was awarded as one of 40 under 40, but this past year, which was really great, was the SBA awarded me the Small Business Champion of the Year for the state of Oregon. And what that tells you, not only with me building my law firm from scratch, but from that award, is that I have the ability, with my law degree, my executive MBA, and my experience of bringing big business, small business, nonprofits, and the arts together to get inside structures and then make those changes. And part of Congress is deal making and negotiating. And so I come with those skills. I also come with the skills or the life story that I told you, but I also have a husband. I identify as queer. I am Jewish, and we have a Gaza conflict and anti-Semitism. I also have $400,000 in student loan debt. That's mostly from law school. And I have an aging mom who I moved up to here. She's in assisted living right now. And so basically all of the crises that America is facing, or most of them, I am either personally involved in and living in, or I have people in my family or friends that I'm actively helping. I'm almost done, sorry. So, I'm not coming off of a political role. I don't have massive political endorsements from folks at the national level, some of which is they don't know me or I wasn't in that circle. But what's really great is that I have the endorsements from all kinds of community leaders who put on the Pride Festival and Parade, from food and beverage incubators, from Music Portland, on and on and on. And so that really speaks to me, and hopefully to the district, that there are different kinds of endorsements. Those political endorsements are really great, but there's endorsements from the community, from community leaders who live and work in the district. And I appreciate you doing this endorsement process.
Sure. So it's already 2:24, so I'm going to speed this up a little bit because we only have an hour. Can each of you please point me to one concrete action or achievement that you've taken that has made the lives of people in your district better, in the district that you're running for? So that could be a resolution you passed, or a bill you championed, or something that's less like governmental than that. It doesn't matter to me what you pick. I just want one. Representative, we'll start with you.
Great. The housing and homelessness packages that I've passed in the last 2 sessions are without a doubt the most impactful thing and the top thing on our voters' minds. I've worked on that with the speaker. The governor has been working on this for over a decade. She came into office with a clear agenda, and we were able to support that agenda effectively. I negotiated McCall's emerald jewel of our environmental policy, the land use Senate Bill 100. We have moved housing to the top. making sure that we are building the housing that we need, that we take some of the community engagement out that has gotten in the way so that we facilitate the building that we need of housing, and making sure that we maintain environmental protections and open spaces, because we know we're going to need it in the future. So without question, that also had shelters and supportive housing and rental assistance. Like, what we've done over the last 4 years has been focusing on housing, and I was proud to lead it in this last year and 2 years.
Great. Counselor.
Great. I think locally, I've been able to build over 400 affordable housing places for people to live. And a lot of those have been multi-generational, with 3 and 4 bedroom places with wraparound services and matching IDA programs. So people can not be stuck as renters, but be saving up to buy their first home. I also recently just was giving a tour to other people about some affordable housing that I built that was designed by and for people with disabilities in Gresham. And it's workforce housing that is run completely on solar panels. So people who live there also don't have to pay a utility bill ever. And so I can actually point to physical buildings and infrastructure where people are living, and that are really improving people's lives. I think nationally I was able to pass the Affordable Care Act by bringing members of Congress from Tennessee, North Carolina, Ohio, and Missouri to the table to get those votes in. And I would say that's probably the most significant piece of legislation that I helped pass.
But when you say you built, are you saying that the council you're on built?
Yeah.
And
and when
you were a vote on that?
Well, when I actually led that.
You
so
led it?
yeah, when I was on the council, my council had a very anti-affordable housing attitude about it. They had asked to return the affordable housing dollars from Metro, even though we were paying into it. I was the one who brought that forth. I organized and got the votes. I needed 3 other votes to pass those, and so yeah.
Commissioner.
Yeah, I'll focus on a public safety project, actually, in order to just a different substantive area. Back in 2020, so this is just shortly after we're in the pandemic, you might remember there was a series of shootings in the Cully neighborhood. These were young people, teenagers, who had been shot in the neighborhood. And there was also a lot of low-level crime happening in the neighborhood, break-ins, people feeling unsafe when they walked the streets, things like that. And members from the community came to me and said, we don't really know how to deal with this. We know that we don't want law enforcement because as a community we have had negative experiences dealing with the police. Will you work with us on a strategy as to how we can solve this? And so my team and I pulled together, I think it was a series of 4 convenings of neighborhood leaders to just talk through the issues that they were facing, ideas that they had about what might alternative strategies be. And I think those series of meetings took us probably into the summer of 21, if I'm remembering correctly. It took a while to do them. It was in the middle of the pandemic. And out of that, we came up with a game plan, which was, let's focus on place-based strategies for addressing public safety. Really specific, really concrete. What's happening on this corner? How can we address this particular block? And from that, I got some funding from the county in our budget process. I think it was about $300,000 to do a pilot project. Unfortunately, we decided to have task the health department with doing that project, and of course they were still just, wall-to-wall pandemic work, so it didn't happen. Flash forward to last August, so August of 23, and our federal grant writer came to me and said, Commissioner, there is a federal grant, $2 million federal grant to do exactly what you have been talking about for the last 2 years, which is place-based public safety. But it's due in 2 weeks. We've never written a grant like this in 2 weeks, but if you will support it, we'll write this grant. We got the grant written, and the reason we did was because of the relationships that we had built and developed a year and a half ago. We got 20 organizations to sign our letters supporting the grant. We got the Native Youth and Family Association to sign on as the the skeleton to really run the project with everybody else's support. We got letters of support from the DA, from various other organizations, and submitted it, and we got the grant for $2 million. It was one of 3, I believe, that were awarded across the country. And this is going directly to community organizations to themselves lead and steer an effort on public safety. Can I say that it has already meaningfully made a difference in public safety? No, because they have just started the process of implementation. But I think what it has already done is empower that community to take charge, to put itself at the center, with the county and government there, law enforcement there too, but really just to support the work that the community is doing. So we were very proud of that.
Rachel?
Well, I don't have any public service experience. The only thing that comes to mind here is that software I coded in the last decade has been credited with allowing Malarkey Roofing Products sales staff of 50 people around the nation to work from home during the pandemic. So, keeps shingles on houses.
Good. Michael?
With my law firm that is a certified benefit company and does community business law, I re-envision what business law and business law access looks like for a community like ours. And my biggest accomplishment is not in building it or getting the awards or that it's still up and running and sustainable, is in that for hundreds or thousands of people, we have given them an opportunity to see business as economic justice. So we have, as I mentioned, we have a community that thrives on small business. So working with migrants, women, people of every type, and giving them access to legal services in an affordable, accessible way, I think that's my biggest accomplishment.
Great. So Congress is a big old mess. I think we can establish that to begin with. How do each of you, and I'll let each of you take a turn on this as well, how do each of you hope to make a concrete difference for your constituents in a place that is as dysfunctional as the U.S. has? And Councilor, I'll start with you.
Yeah, currently I'm on a divided council where I would say Democrats are probably in the minority. And I have been able to, if you call our council president, who I think is a very conservative Republican, she will tell you that I am good at finding the place where we can agree on policies that make improvements in our community. And like I said, I'm able to get the 4 out of the 7 votes that I need. Many times, the majority of those. You okay?
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And I think that is important. When I first moved to DC, it was during the Bush administration, and I was there to advocate for public education as well as to advocate on the budget and appropriations process. So I know the federal budget and appropriations and federal policy making process well. Again, when I was assigned to work on the DREAM Act, I worked with Senator McCain, Senator Durbin, and Representative Kennedy at the time to draft the policy that is now DACA, and we were able to make that pass. And then again with the Affordable Care Act, I was assigned some pretty tough states. I was able to move Senator Kay Hagan by bringing 96 people from North Carolina to meet with her, and for her to hear directly from them how not having health care impacted their lives. And although she didn't want to support it, and a lot of these states, don't even want Medicaid expansion, we were able to move her on the vote. So I know how to get things done. I think recently, just sit, you're fine.
You're right.
Are you okay?
I think so.
Okay. I think
Dust in the morgue here.
yeah.
You are in a very dusty room. The dust of centuries has settled upon us.
It's also allergy season here.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'll just wrap this up by saying, and I hope I did not lose my thought. I may have lost my thought, but.
Well, you were talking about DACA.
Thank you. So yes, with DACA and with the Affordable Care Act, I was able to move members of Congress, both Republican.
Who were you working for at that time?
I worked for an organization that was started by Bobby Kennedy called Center for Community Change.
Okay.
And we were part of the Healthcare for America Now coalition. And I also helped to start an organization called United We Dream, which was the first national dreamers organization.
Okay. Got it.
That I incubated. And so yeah, so I know what it's like to get stuff done locally. I know what it's done to get stuff at the federal level. And then also, I helped in Florida to pass a referendum to restore voting rights for over 1.5 million returning citizens with Desmond Meade. I also helped Stacey Abrams for 10 years do voter engagement work in Georgia to make Georgia the state that it is now, and she's endorsed me in this race. And then I also helped to repeal the Show Me Your Papers law in Arizona that Senator President Russell Pierce at the time put into place. And so, I've done work in a lot of different states and a lot of places in this country, and in my own city, which I think is more moderate than Portland in this district. And I think I've proven that I can get things done.
Great. Commissioner?
Yeah, I think at any time, being one of 435 members of Congress places some challenges on individually delivering concrete results for your constituents. But in this time in particular, when we have a chance of continued Republican control of the House, the job of being a congressperson is certainly trying to pass legislation and policy. But I think even more than that, it is articulating what the big policies are that we want to move over the next period of time. And by big policies, I am talking about things like the Green New Deal. I'm talking about things like Medicare for All, really big systemic shifts in how we're doing things. So I think the work at this time, maybe at any time, is articulating those bold policies, but also finding pathways to do more concrete things. And this is part of what your question was getting to. And there is sort of an odd way in which being a county commissioner, which is a position with very little individual power or authority, is similar to that. In other words, what I have done at the county is simultaneously advocate for really big policy shifts. Long-term rent assistance. This is something I came into the county talking about. Nobody was talking about long-term rent assistance at the time. I led briefings at the county. I briefed legislators. I started a pilot project on long-term rent assistance as just a key tool for creating housing affordability. It's not building affordable housing, but it's creating housing affordability. And of course, that was part of the Supportive Housing Services measure, which was passed with a whole lot of people. I certainly don't pretend to have been the one who passed it, but I think that work was fundamental to a strategy that has been a game changer for all of the, the crisis that remains, for the things that haven't been done. If we had not had long-term rent assistance, it would be much worse today. So that's an example of a big policy. You advocate for a big policy, and then you also find the smaller places in the system and projects, gaps, resource gaps that you can fill. So a few examples of those. I identified that one of the problems, real sticking points with getting people off the streets and into housing, was the fact that we had nonprofits, possibly still do, nonprofit agencies looking for housing units, landlords looking for people to rent them, and they were all running around town trying to find each other, and there was no centralized place to do that. And so I advocated for a centralized agency. The one they ended up contracting with is called Housing Connector, that brings these two together, and that creates a database that everybody can access. So those, or a resource gap. We lacked specific housing services for LGBTQ folks, and we know that LGBTQ folks disproportionately experience homelessness. So secured $850,000 for an LGBTQ specific housing services center. So those are examples of what I think it's going to take to deliver, what you asked, concrete results in this Congress, simultaneously identifying and being clear about a bold vision, and then finding pathways. And it's sometimes, I think, about opportunity presenting itself. It's a lot about taking the initiative to identify those ideas yourself. We are not going to be chairs of committees. We are going to have to figure out how to navigate this really complicated situation. And I think relationships, and that's partly why I use the Cully example, because I think that's so important. Relationships with community members who help us understand what the concrete things are that we can deliver, and that work with us to design them, are going to be key to being effective in this Congress.
Can I ask a
Well, we haven't gotten through this round of.
Oh, we haven't. I'm so sorry.
Once we do, I
Sorry.
promise.
No, go ahead. My mistake.
I want to do these
Yes,
three folks,
forgive
and
me, I
then
forgot where we were.
and
Yeah, please.
then Michael.
Yeah, so first of all, I think the constituents here, they deserve someone who will be a congressperson who knows not just the issues, they also know the industries. I know the industries really well, from food and beverage and the food ecosystem and farming, all the way to the restaurants and the food that we eat that's plated. There is a massive understanding of the people who are here and the work that they're doing and their livelihood and their passions. And I think I have a really big understanding of that, because you asked about constituents. The other thing is, whoever wins in this room, will have an office here and an office in DC, and being creative with how to communicate with constituents, having educational programming, and making government accessible again, I think is a really important thing. I think people are, as you mentioned, tired of Congress, which is a dumpster fire, cluster of chaos, whatever you want to call it. And in order for us to reinvigorate the belief that politics can be for people, we have to provide a pathway for folks to understand that government can and should work for them. And in order to do that, we have to remind them that we are working on issues that they care about. So making sure that those systems of communications and those channels work. In terms of working with folks, I mentioned earlier, I have a law degree and an MBA. I'm also a trained mediator. I had a mediation company when I was in San Diego. I also mediated in a small claims court pro bono for quite some time. I think mediation skills are really important. And if you can pick out common interest, which is really hard with folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, I know that, but if you can pick out common interest with folks and you can say to them, look, I know you're conservative. I also share some of these conservative values. I know you care about economic prosperity. I know you care about your family surviving. You can then talk to them about things that maybe they didn't think that they would be interested in. And I think I'm the right person for that. I'm 39, but I have friends who are 75. I have worked with big business, small business, commercial tenants, commercial landlords, nonprofits. So I'm going to be able to hold, I'm a Katie Porter, Elizabeth Warren kind of Democrat. I'm going to be able to hold corporations accountable once I'm invited to that table. And I think that's really important here. I think that we're often missing the mark that it does take business negotiation skills to get legislation through.
Great. Rachel?
Well, I've got bold ideas here. I'm a performing musician who's played a couple thousand gigs in my life. I'm used to walking on aircraft carriers and playing music and playing for admirals, improvised jazz. Played with Ray Charles, one gig.
How was that?
It was incredible. I was the youngest person on the stage that night, but yeah, I was pretty good too. It was a good band. I hope to lead the people in Congress and lead things by demand rather than changing the supply through laws. I hope to be highly visible as a trans woman, jazz musician, software engineer in Congress. I hope that being elected as a trans woman or passing this election would create a buzz, in the national media. I've had musicians living with me this year. I had 2 Generation Z musicians who are both transgender living with me in January and February, and they're both incredible musicians. And they had some of their transgender musician friends over, and it was incredible. And now I have a drummer whose his name is Andy Herco. He moved in a couple weeks ago. And we made amazing music in the last couple of weeks and made our first recording last night. And I hope that such a buzz would be created that perhaps we could play at the Democratic National Convention this summer. Thanks. So we're aiming for that.
Representative?
Very cool. Thank you. So tangible results, the number one way immediately is with constituent services, without a doubt. That has been the most privileged opportunity to help people get their paperwork done, to get their rental assistance done. I think constituent services and really being available is immediate. Secondarily, not necessarily in the long term, but that's always been our first priority in our office, and we've established a lot of relationships that way. So relationships out of the building, relationships in the building. So showing up and knowing who is doing the work that I want to work on, and then offering to assist, and not caring who gets credit, but digging in and making sure that we get the work done. And honestly, that's how I was able to get my global budget, and excuse me, I'm so sorry that I was coughing while you were trying to answer, but the global budget pilot project was amended in 2021 to Andrea Salinas's public option bill, because I was able to work with her and help her understand how that would actually facilitate the public option being sustainable. And so building that trust and having worked with her, she was able to give me the time to listen and really think about it, and I think that's critical. We're not going to have gavels for a long time when we're elected. We need to build relationships, build trust, and have influence that way. And then the other thing is infrastructure investments. In 2025, we have a major transportation infrastructure project, and it is nowhere near done at the state level. There's going to be a lot of challenges, I think, for our state budget to get passed for the transportation package, and the federal delegation is going to have a lot of opportunity to help with that, and so that's one of the top priorities.
Tell me if this is redundant after that, but we had Congressman Blumenauer in after when he decided to retire, and he talked to us and he said one of his regrets was he didn't focus enough. He was he was all over a little bit, and he said if I had to do it over again, I would focus very hard on a couple of things. And I wonder if you agree with that, one, so that's a yes or no. And then two, if you really feel like you need to focus, what's the one thing like yours is dying to get your hands on if you get to Congress? You want to start here and go that way?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think that you do have to focus on a few things and follow them from beginning to end, whatever the end may be. I think that some of that is opportunistic, right? I mean, we can have a list of things that we take to Congress. I had a list of things I brought to the county, then we went into a pandemic. So I think it has to be a combination of a clear idea of where we want to head on a set of issues, but then also the creativity and the relationship building to be able to identify other opportunities. And if it looks like thing A, the thing I thought I was going to do, the pathway's a little, it's a little murky, not sure we're going to get there, having the flexibility, creativity, relationships to say, but I see a pathway here.
What's thing A?
Right. For me, thing A is housing.
Housing.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's affordable housing.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Earl about 6 years ago, and he explained to me how, although he went to school on the east side of this county, he felt a lot of time and a lot of the resources were coming to the west side. And we started doing work to try to bring more resources to the east side. And I think some of that is probably his unfinished work. And that we started doing that together 6 years ago. We started bringing infrastructure dollars to make our streets safer on the east side. The city of Gresham ended up paying for the sewage system of Portland, and then we had to pay it again for our own. And I think that really stuck with him.
That would be your focus?
I think bringing the infrastructure dollars to the other parts of the district and creating equity amongst the district would be a big one for me.
Is U.S. Congress the right seat for that?
Yes, I think one, because of housing, but two, one example that I'll give to you. We recently got CHIPS dollars. Right, we got over $75 million of CHIPS dollars. We're the second place in this country to get that money. Microchip has been in Gresham for about 20 years. They started with 60 employees. In 20 years, grew to 900. With this recent investment, because we did, by the way, put up about $45 million worth of tax abatements, we helped build out the company. We're about to bring 300 more jobs, good paying manufacturing jobs that are important for our region. And so I think that we have an opportunity to reshore jobs back to our region, and particularly in the areas of investment of infrastructure as well as these technologies. So yes, those are definitely
Okay.
federal.
That's a federal.
Yeah.
All right.
Great. Without question, I would never question. I'm sorry. Without question, I would never question. I wouldn't question Earl Blumenauer's wisdom on this. I would also say that having a focus and knowing what you're aiming for, but also keeping the opportunities open as you see them, is really important. And just as an example, healthcare is why I ran for office. It's what universally high quality, sustainable program that's nationwide, without question, is what I'm running for office to do. I was gunning for healthcare chair, and the speaker said, I'm sorry, the Tetris game doesn't work out that way. How do you feel about housing? And it was an immediate opportunity to see that housing is healthcare. I've known that, and it gave me an opportunity to really focus on that. And we did that with the 1115 waiver and making sure that we have 6 months of rental assistance for people in transition. That waiver, we are one of the first states to do that. We have to be successful, and partnering at the federal level with our state legislators will help us make sure that other states have the opportunity for that waiver. So I absolutely agree that the focus, and for me it's a universal healthcare system that works and is sustainable and affordable and high quality, but upstream investments, ending childhood poverty and getting people fed and housed will do a lot more. So I'm open to other opportunities.
Rachel.
Well, my 2018 campaign was definitely dedicated to fighting climate change through working from home and driving less. I thought I was pretty strong in sticking to that as the main goal in that campaign. In my 2020 campaign, I kind of branched out in all issues and did a lot of writing and exploring all kinds of things, and I wound up feeling like I had spread myself too thin with all that stuff. So this campaign, I've gone back to being strong on climate change action, and coming up with the idea of that we really do need to reduce population quite significantly. So that's what I'm dedicating this thing to. I think Medicare for all is something that we should do, but I don't have any bright ideas about that. People have been working on that for quite a long time, and I hope they can make some progress with that. And I choose to stay out of that battle. And I don't know what's going on with these wars around the world. I think we're going to see a lot more of that if we don't decrease our population.
Population's coming down.
It is coming down, yeah.
In most regions.
It is. I don't think it's coming down fast enough. I think we should take it really seriously and be very, very forthright in what we're doing there.
Okay, Michael.
Other than federally legalizing and unscheduling marijuana, which Earl has been working on for 20 plus years, that immediately for me would be a no-brainer, and something that I think would not only help the economy, but we have so many state, federal supremacy issues right now, as you know, and I think that it's more than time to federally legalize cannabis. So that would be my start. But other than that, Food and Farm Act, Earl's been working on a Food and Farm Act for quite some time. I don't know if you know, every 5-6 years or so, America passes this massive farm bill, which, as you can imagine, has everything in it: pork, riders, and we're currently on a stopgap measure. That farm bill expired, and so we have this really great opportunity to look at subsidies that we're still giving to Midwest corn farmers to grow corn for ethanol. We're giving out subsidies to large agricultural corporations. So we actually could not only help with migrant rights, we could actually look at our food systems, which are hanging by a thread, and we could invest or reinvest a lot of that money into community gardens, into food education, into local sustainable farming, and then making sure that the farms in this region are going to survive, because they're multi-generational farms that are literally on the verge of collapse. They're not sure if they can make it. So I think we're taking our food and our food ecosystems for granted, and I think that that is a bill that's extremely important, but also could be passed.
Great.
Could I add, at the risk of treading into quicksand by disagreeing a little bit with Congressman Blumenauer, just add one thing, which is to say, I do think it's important to have a focus and to be clear about what you're working on and to stick with it. And you can't do 20 things at one time. However, I also think that so many of these issues are interrelated that to silo yourself would be a mistake, right? So, for example, I came to the county with a focus on homelessness, quickly understood that that interconnects with public safety, quickly understood that public health has a role to play. So when I think of the buckets of issues in congressional work, I think of shared prosperity, I think of climate change, and democracy and civil rights. And all of those three things are interconnected. And if we were to try to silo an issue from one of those buckets without addressing those other buckets, I think we'd run into trouble. In other words, we've got to address climate change, it's existential. Can't do it unless we have a functioning democracy. We need shared prosperity. That means we've got to do climate change right in order to get to shared prosperity. So I'm not really disagreeing with it. I think I'm adding some nuance and context to how I look at it.
Can I jump in on this too? Because I agree that a lot of these issues intersect, and but the thing that I think we never get to talk about is the politics of this position. It's a very safe Democratic seat, probably one of the safest in the country, and there's an opportunity to actually show leadership from this position to help shape the Congress. And I think with Earl, I've worked on recruiting 68 people to run for office on the east part of this district, from local school boards to county commissioners, and 60 of those people have gotten elected. And we have transformed our region to actually have people who are elected officials with the lived experience, but also representative of the communities that they live in. We are a really functioning part of this region. I think that what doesn't get spoken about is that given that this is going to be a safe seat, and whoever wins on May 21st will, unless we have something horribly goes wrong, that person will be the next congressperson. That's a big opportunity for somebody to get up and put energy into recruiting other people across this country to win back the Congress to one that is more functioning. And that's what I'm really excited about doing. And I think the minute if I win this, I'm heading to help Sarah McBride win her position and become the first trans woman in this country. I'm heading to Texas to help Julie Johnson win and become the first lesbian in the American South, and to win back the House that we need with more functioning people that are not divisive and want to get work done. And I think that's one of the really unique things about this position. I hope that all of us are thinking about how we bring that to the kind of the federal role of this position. So.
Yeah, and as I said yesterday in the debate, I treat this as a job application. This job hasn't been up since 1996, and so it's an interesting job, and we have interviews by the public and interviews by the media. But when you think of jobs, you have to think of qualifications, and so I think we all agree very much on the issues. The question is, how do we execute those? How are we going to be in DC? How are we going to be in the media storm? How are we going to be in the MAGA Republican storm? How are we going to stand up to Mike Johnson? So that is a good point, though, that all of those things.
To deal with him. It passed his pro-leg.
Yeah, his wife might try to send me to gay conversion therapy.
Oh, well, yeah. I'm thinking. I don't know how he's going to last. Is what.
Right. Oh, yeah. Okay.
My point. Yeah.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, so I think we all agree. My point is there is a component of jobs and job functions which we have to look at, of building out offices, creating communication systems, talking to the press, being an advocate for these issues. So it's a massive undertaking, and it's a very multifaceted position, as you know. So that's what I think is really important to just highlight, that there's the issues and then there's the job functions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. No, we're good.
All right.
It's 4 o'clock.
I know.
2 o'clock.
I know.
4 o'clock in
Hopefully not
Chicago, Kansas City.
Very, very quickly before we get to our last question, we're asking this to a lot of people running for a lot of high offices, and I realize it probably seems a little bit outside of what you're interested in talking about. However, what do you make? Let me rephrase this.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know where this is going either, but
Is it appropriate for the governor's wife to have a formal role in her office? Yes or no? And feel free to speak further on it. Start with you.
I think what I hear, what I understand is that there are many states where the governor's spouse does have a formal role in the office, and so I think with the appropriate sort of structure and oversight that it can be done. Yeah.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
I think what needs to get done, and is this the person that can get it done? And I think a lot of times we lack innovation in government, and in these positions that we do things the way that they've always been done. And I think we have to be open to restructuring and these systems and structures to make sure that we're meeting the needs of people today.
So that's a yes.
Yeah, I'm open to it. Yeah.
I'm going to say maybe, because, and I know that wasn't one of your your questions, but
Do you prefer the binary on that one?
I hear you, Erin, but what I'll say is I trust Tina Kotek. I understand her integrity, her leadership. I very much appreciate that, and I appreciate that she is creating new ways of us thinking about how she's going to lead. The caveat to that is it concerns me when people who I deeply also respect in her office have left, and I don't know the background to that. So I wonder about that, but I think there's absolutely a reasonable possibility there, but I think there are some red flags there, and don't know any more than that.
Sure. Rachel, any thoughts on this?
Oh, well, I don't really watch any news, I don't know what's going on with the governor in this thing. If someone's got a good idea and it makes sense, we should listen to it.
I think it's 100% appropriate if there is no impropriety, and I think that we are too quick to assume or imply impropriety based on past elected officials. So, as we tell folks, assume best intentions, I know that Tina is the governor, but we should probably do the same for her, assume best intentions. That doesn't mean that it shouldn't be investigated thoroughly, but the idea of concluding before we've done our investigation, we have a problem with that in America, where we make conclusions prematurely.
Can I just elaborate? I think this is a distraction to a large degree. Unless there's actually something there, she has done such a remarkable job that, I think we're looking, the euphemistic we.
Well, respectfully, it's a self-created distraction.
Yeah.
We didn't do this over here on my side of the table.
I'm not pointing fingers at anyone on any side of the table. I think, though, that she's had a very clean leadership, and people are generally pretty happy with it. So I think it's an interesting sort of dynamic that this is happening at this time.
Sure.
I think the question about structure is the important one, and it would have been ideal to have the structure in place before making the move. So it's the having a structure set out, having oversight. But again, it comes back to, as long as you have those things, there's nothing inherently inappropriate about having a spouse also have a role.
And I would just disagree a little bit on that, in the fact that sometimes we come into positions and we see a need for change, and we then have to change the structures and systems that maybe were set in place by others.
Right.
Because
So
they may be
create the
antiquated.
structure.
Yes.
In other words, create the structure that allows that.
Right. And I think that's what she's doing. Right.
Okay.
It didn't exist.
All right, thank you. Final question, and it's a fun one. You want to do the fun one?
You do the fun one. I like how you do
Are you
it.
gonna pause for a real long time?
No, because I actually know how to do this one, which I didn't with the last one. If there were a movie made of your life, what actor
You shared with
would,
me last time,
would
so you gotta
play
step
you?
down there.
And
And
that's
you don't have to
fair.
look like the
come
person.
on.
It's who would be good at,
Who-
Even if they don't look like
Who is Michael Jonas on screen?
Oh, jeez, that's really hard. I mean, years ago I was told that I was like David Schwimmer from Ross from Friends, but I don't think he's a movie actor.
That's fine.
That's fine.
But sure,
No,
Ross
he's
from Friends.
moving to the big screen for
He
this
was
one.
good in Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
Oh, it just always comes down to Jodie Foster in Contact.
That's a great choice.
You're so sure of this. You're ready for that. I would tell you that Uma Thurman, because of two things. One, she's an amazing advocate for abortion rights, but two, her resuscitation in Pulp Fiction, one of my all-time favorite movies, leads me to being able to articulate to people what it looks like to bring somebody back with Narcan, and that's been helpful over the last few years.
Narcan.
Yeah.
I like Edward James Olmos.
Nice.
And a lot of the movies that he stood for, like Stand and Deliver, and they were really about building movements of people to change policy.
And we were for a mashup of Halle Berry and Meryl Streep.
Oh, wow.
Right? I mean, doesn't it just evoke something right there?
Are you thinking, when you say mashup, you're thinking like what Todd Haynes did with the Bob Dylan biopic, where like different actors play Bob Dylan in different
scenes? I haven't seen that biopic. I'm saying a combination. So Meryl Streep, because she can do absolutely anything and she can be absolutely anybody. And Halle Berry, because there's a level of intensity that she brings that just adds something to the mix.
All right, very good.
You want to get revenge and say who should play
Yeah.
us?
Yeah, oh, we get to say that,
Yes.
or do you have something in mind?
Oh, Aaron, I'm so interested to know that you're in.
I
You
always
remind
say,
me a little bit of Bryan Cranston. I think you both could play each other.
what's he?
From Breaking Bad, or
Oh,
the
yeah.
dad and Malcolm in the Middle.
Are you
Yeah.
asking them to suggest who should play us?
Sure.
Or are you just
Get a little revenge.
Oh, I thought you were going to share
No.
who you thought.
I love Ed Norton.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I'm not as smart as Ed Norton, but he's really smart. I mean, he's amazing. That guy's incredible.
Yes.
But anyway, I don't know. I get Conan O'Brien a lot for looks. Like if my hair gets taller.
Yeah, I would be played by Paul Giamatti probably in his American Splendor period.
All right, love it, everybody. Love it. Thank you.